Just some guy talking, and today I want to talk about content, specifically my content, and some of the obstacles and challenges that I face in coming up with topics and creating videos and putting them up on YouTube for hopefully people to watch. Now, you might be watching right now thinking to yourself, I don't know who you are. I don't care what your challenges and obstacles are. Or you might be one of my handful of followers and thinking to yourself, I still don't care what your obstacles and challenges are. Just make the freaking video. But bear with me. I will try my best to make this valuable and relatable to you and to tie it back to some of the other issues that I've spent some time talking about in the past. So let's start with a couple challenges that I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about. One is that I'm a procrastinator. That's an obvious challenge when you're trying to create regular content. I'm also hypercritical of myself. Also an obvious challenge when you're watching yourself on video and listening to yourself talk. The real challenge, though, that I want to talk about today is the fact that I have set out to make a channel that is as neutral as I can make it when it comes to dealing with hot topic issues like politics or other divisive issues that are facing us today. Nobody can be completely neutral or objective, but I do make a deliberate choice to try to scale back and not veer in one direction or another so that we can actually facilitate a conversation about these things. Because as I've talked about in the past, we can say things in a way or approach things from a certain perspective that makes the people on the other side immediately tune out. And I don't think that that's helpful. It's something that I feel like I want to contribute to fixing. So, it is a challenge though, because again, we are tribal creatures. I am no different. I belong to tribes. There are groups that I associate myself with, that whose values I share, whose opinions I mirror or echo. And when I set out to make content, it is an effort sometimes for me to scale those opinions back and try my best to see the other side of this argument, to present it in a way that doesn't skew in one direction or another, but moves a conversation along. Why does that matter to you? Well, here's why it matters, is because this is something that we all should be trying to do a little bit more. And I can tell you, having gone through this process for a couple months, that it is very hard to do. It's a discipline. It's something that we have to practice. So, let's talk about tribalism. And I've spent some time talking about some of the pitfalls of that, right? Obviously, it leads to some rejection of facts. It leads us to not engage completely in some constructive debates, to not really accept the truth about certain things. But there's a value to being part of a tribe. That's why we evolved that way. There's a protective aspect of being part of a group. There is a sense of identity that you derive from that that helps you in terms of the decisions that you make from day to day. We can look to other people and see kind of examples of how we might make some choices that might otherwise be much harder to make. And obviously, there's that sense of belonging, there's that sense of pride. Those are all things that are valuable to us, right? They might have obstacles, a dark side, if you will, but that doesn't mean that they're not important. So, the other part when it comes to content specifically is that when you are talking in the language of your tribe about the issues that your tribe feels are important, and from the perspective that your group likes to think about those things from, you have theoretically anyway, a built-in audience. You can plug into a mindset where people are going to automatically agree with you. You're not making them think too much. You're kind of echoing what they already think to themselves. I go back to an earlier video again where I was talking about cognitive bias, how we tend to go looking for things that agree with what we already believe. We don't go looking for evidence that disproves our beliefs. We want to hear somebody say that we're right. It's a natural thing to want. So when I set out to make a video or a series of videos that doesn't appeal to one group or another specifically or explicitly, I am effectively ruling out my ability to just get discovered by those people who are looking for someone who's saying exactly what they want to hear. Now, that's not a big challenge. I'm not complaining about that from the perspective of not having enough followers or views or anything like that. But I do want to use it as an example of how that works in our real life. So there are things that we want. We want to be validated. We want to be heard. We want to be agreed with. We want people to, cheer us on. We want to be part of a team. Hopefully we want, most of us want to be part of a winning team. And so we tend to tailor the way that we talk to appeal to the people who are already there, our captive audience, so to speak, the people who already belong to our group, whether that's our family or coworkers or friends or people who identify with us, in this political spectrum, or the people who are going to stand on our side of a protest line, etc. So, when I look at the challenges that I'm facing in creating content that disconnects me from that echo chamber, as it were, it is an interesting view onto what I may be doing in my real life. They say that fiction mirrors reality, right? But in this case, reality mirrors this fiction, right? This just some guy persona that I speak to the camera in. And it's helpful to me. It's been a good process. Additionally, we also get an added boost to all those values that I have stated stated just a second ago, if we can plug into the outrage machine, right? If we have if there's a topic that our groups are specifically angry about, we can jump into that um, stream of consciousness and get swept along and get an additional boost to that, validation. We get that added oomph to the, yeah, exactly what he said kind of mentality, right? That's why when you go onto Twitter, if you use Twitter, you go and you check and see what are the trending buzzwords today. What's the hashtag that I can put on this tweet? Because that'll get me more views, that'll get me more likes, that'll get me more followers. And when you step outside of social media, which is a topic in and of itself that I'm not going to go down that path for on this video. But when you step outside of social media and you think to yourself how you do that in your life, it's particularly problematic when you realize that we do that in our regular day-to-day existence. We look around, we see what people are fired up about, and we turn to the person next to us and go, "Did you hear about so-and-so? Can you believe that?" And it just, becomes an exciting, interesting conversation where, again, we can get a lot of that value out of our tribe or like-minded individuals that I talked about earlier. What is the issue with that? Why does that matter? It matters because if we allow ourselves to get plugged into that, we can get swept further and further away from the truth. And the more that we solidify ourselves into that, state of pissed offedness that we can get into, the harder it is for us to scale back. And I go back to something I said earlier. It has been a process. It is a discipline. It is a thing that I have to continue to try to get better at, to step back from my personal feelings, the things that I have aligned myself, the opinions that I have formed through research or just through osmosis from the groups that I'm a part of, in order for me to speak in a way that is not immediately turning people off to having a conversation with me or listening to what I have to say. Okay, I can go on and on. You can understand how this could be a horse that I could beat well past the point of death. But my point in dealing and talking about these challenges is to try to give you an insight into how our brains work and why it is productive. It's helpful. It has helped me a lot to think about what the other side thinks about this particular thing. Whether or not I agree with them, it is very helpful for me to refine my opinions, to identify some of the things that I'm saying simply because that's what my group says. This is how my group talks about this particular issue, and to get back towards a place in the middle. And I'll end by saying that I think that this is something that is very important for all of us, particularly at this time in our history as a country, as a world, as a species, um, to learn to be more moderate, to moderate some of our opinions, our talk tracks, our verbiage, so that we can continue to interact with each other, even if we don't agree with each other, and be productive and healthy as a collective group, a whole group, an amalgamation of all the different tribes to which we may belong, or we don't. All right, that's it. I'm just some guy talking. I will talk to you next time. Have a great day, and all things in moderation, including conversation. Just some guy talking, and today I want to talk about content. Yeah, in another language. Just some guy talking, and today I want to talk about content. Specific, and that's also a challenge, specifically when I am going back and trying to watch myself on video and figure out whether or not blah, blah, blah. Just some guy talking here, and I have an itch underneath my eye, and I'm going to have to